Hey Toy fans, D21Beast here, back with another figure review for you guys here today. And if you've been following my channel for a while, or if you saw my recent Iron Fist review, you'll know that I've been slowly but surely building together all the pieces to be able to build Odin the AllFather. Well, now I've got all the pieces and I want to go ahead and put them together. But as a quick reminder, let's just remind you who came with what. Scarlet Witch actually came with the head, the cape, and the spear for Odin. The Sentry came with the arms. Iron Fist came with the left leg. Hawkeye came with the torso. And Thor came with the right leg and the sword of Odin. Now, alternately, this AllFather Wave did feature an additional Build-A-Figure character I could have constructed, King Thor, and to do that I would have needed to pick up the Carol Danvers Captain Marvel figure, which I might still do in the future. She comes with the head of King Thor. I also would have needed to pick up the Machine Man, who comes with the arms for King Thor. That figure I may not end up picking up at all. Alright, let's get these figures out of the way and start assembling our Odin Build-A-Figure. We're going to begin by attaching the cape and the head to this torso. And we're going to snap on each arm. It is a bit difficult to get the legs plugged into this figure. The dressing around the waist of the figure kind of gets in the way of your hands when you're trying to plug in the legs, but give them a little push and they will eventually click in. Now all we have to do is stick the weapons in the hands and this Odin figure is complete. Alright toy fans, if you're not familiar with Odin, and if we're ignoring ancient text, his first appearance was actually in the pages of Journey into Mystery number 85 from 1962, where he was created by comic book legends Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. To Asgardians, Odin is actually known as the Allfather, and he's the biological father of Thor and the adoptive father of Loki. Overall, I think the sculpt of this one... What's that? Do I really have to? Okay, fine. Plus, he's also the father of some other character that Marvel thinks is a really big deal that no one else does, who recently showed up in the comics. Her name's Angela, and that's all I've really got to say about that. We're not going to worry about her until she actually shows up in a movie, which, come to think of it, may not actually take that long to happen these days. Moving on. Overall, I really do like the sculpting of this figure, but I've got some nitpicks about the way color's been applied. The first thing I want to comment on is the helmet for this figure. I do like the sculpting of the helmet. I think it looks really nice, especially with the horns coming around and the ornamentation all throughout the helmet piece, but I don't like the color of the plastic they've chosen to mold this thing in. It's kind of this sort of goldish, bronzish color that reflects light a lot. I get the idea that they're trying to go for some sort of like shiny gold helmet look, but I think it would have been better with paint similar to what we're seeing here on the shoulders for the cape than having just this solid color here. Plus, it's also the same color as the spear, and both of these things together when posed to the figure, the helmet's not removable by the way, but both of these things when the figure's posed really just kind of makes it look plastic, frankly, so I don't like the color choice that they've used for the helmet. Wish they would have done that a little bit differently. On the face of the figure though, we do have a nice eye patch here. The eye has been painted cleanly, except the pupil for the eye is kind of offset a little bit, kind of looking left. And when this figure's only got one eye, he's constantly looking that way. And I kind of wish they didn't do it that way. I mean, to pose this guy staring straight on, I kind of have to turn his head at this point. And unfortunately, turning his head like this to have him staring on, if anything, makes him seem more pouty than actually being mad. But I do like the detail of the beard. There's some nice sculpting throughout. And then we have the chest plate for this figure, which is sculpted really nicely, and there's a wash running around. There's also some detail there for a little belt that's running across the chest of the figure. There's a nice sculpted belt piece, as well as some other metalwork that's been painted on the waist of this figure. Coming down, we've got this sort of flowing fabric that doesn't really have a paint wash in it or anything. Now, the arms of this figure are sculpted pretty nicely, very muscular, and they've got a nice leather banding that's been painted on each side of the figure. As we rotate the figure around, you're going to see that that same paint wash that was applied to the front on the breastplate has actually been repeated on the back of this figure as well. The cape for this Odin figure is actually removable, and it looks really nice and sculpted, but I do wish that there was a wash applied to this cape to just give it a little bit more detail. Also, I want to point out, I had fully expected this Odin figure to use the same arms as Thor, but they are actually individual sculpts through and through, so that was a nice touch on Hasbro's part. Including the cape, Thor actually has these two other accessories here. He's got this long sort of Asgardian broadsword that has nice sculpted detail here. I like that the line has been sculpted into the blade of the sword and all that ornamentation at the hilt of the blade. The only paint applied to this item is actually on the handle, but overall I think it's a very nice looking solid piece and it fits nice into his hand. The other accessory we have here is Odin's spear. Now, Norse mythology tells us this spear's name is Gungnir. I don't know if that applies to the comics as well. I haven't read enough Thor, but if that holds true in the comics, let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious to know about that. But this spear does look pretty nice and has some great sculpted detail. I just wish the color wasn't so flat. Articulation on this Odin figure is somewhat lacking, unfortunately. He has a ball-jointed head that'll only bend back that far, and it doesn't bend down at all because of that beard sculpt. It does rotate all the way around at the shoulder and bend out from the body only about that far. The armor is not getting in the way. There's a hinge to actually help it move. It's just the shoulder joint won't go up any higher. He's got a full rotation here at the bicep, as well as a rotation here at the elbow. It does not bend at 90 degrees, unfortunately, and only bends back, well, actually bends back further than it should. Full rotation here at the wrist, the handle bend back that far, bend down that far. Same rotation here on the other side. There's no waist joint on the figure, but he's got a diaphragm joint that'll bend forward, not at all. back only slightly, rotates left and right, and then he's got a ball jointed hip that's a bit hindered by the leg dressing for the figure. He's got a double jointed knee, for rotation at that hip joint. It's a little tight on my Build-A-Figure. He's got an ankle that'll bend down that far, bend up that far, and he's got that Hasbro ankle pivot that's so great. But even though this figure's got some great articulation from the waist down, most of those joints aren't really that usable because of the dressing around the waist and the legs of this figure. In sculpt, they look great, but in practice, he is a bit limited. Mostly, you're only going to be able to get this guy standing in some pretty stoic poses, which I guess for Odin is exactly what you'd need from the figure. But I do wish I could do more. Height-wise, we can see that this Odin Build-A-Figure does stand just a little bit under 7.5 inches tall. For some size comparison, here we have the AllFather standing next to his son Thor from this same wave. Here he is compared to the Scarlet Witch, the Iron Fist, the Sentry, and the Hawkeye figure also from this same wave. And finally, here he is compared to the 6-inch scale Marvel Legends Infinite Series Wolverine.
Hey Bob, did you hear they killed me in the comics last year? Indeed I have. Though strangely, I'm told you've yet to report to the gates of Valhalla. You didn't end up in that other place, did you? Oh, me? No, I've just been busy.
Alright, toy fans, well that's my review of the Odin Build-A-Figure, part of the AllFather Wave of Marvel Legends, released by Hasbro in 2015. Overall, while I do like the sculpt and the size of this figure, I am let down by the accessories, some of the paintwork, and really the articulation. It's very limiting, and I'm very disappointed by that. Personally, I'd recommend passing on this figure, but if you're a Marvel Legends completionist or a fan of the Asgardian characters, this figure might be worth you checking out. But when making your purchasing decision, you do need to keep in mind that you need to buy at least 5 figures from the AllFather Wave before you can complete this Odin figure. For that reason, I'm going to recommend you wait to buy the AllFather Wave until you can find a good sale on all the figures involved. Well, thanks for watching this review, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you saw here, please feel free to rate, share, and subscribe. Also, be sure to hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at D21Beast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.